everyone. I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes before the Google Hangout begins, and then I'll take a look at the questions that you've submitted. If you have a question, go ahead and submit it now, and I'll scroll through and decide which ones I want to answer. For those of you just joining, I'm just waiting a couple of minutes while all our classmates can join, and then we'll get started. If you have a question, go ahead and submit it, and I'll take a look on my screen to see which one might be useful for most people. We're just going to wait one more minute, and then we'll get started. I see some more questions are coming in, so just waiting one moment. All right, so thank you everyone for joining in. My name is Cristina Villegas. I've been your lecturer this week, and I appreciate you dialing in. I am the deputy of the Mines to Markets program at Pact. It's an international NGO that focuses on natural resources management, livelihoods, and health. Anything in natural resources management cone fits my program. We have about 22 projects at the moment, and my job is to work with teams around the world in about 9 countries, make sure that they feel confident in running the project. If they have any questions about mining or about program management, my job is to be a coach and a mentor, and then build up their capacity, and then they can serve as mentors and coaches in their own countries as well. So that's who I am. I'm actually currently in Cambodia right now. I was in Indonesia last week, taking a look at tin and gold mines. And so yeah, that's, I forgot how many countries I've been to now. That with artisanal mining, that's probably around 15 at this point, maybe 20. So anyways, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for joining me. The first question is, says, hello, Cristina. Thank you for the lecture on this module. We have some questions about basic technology in ASM. And is the situation of ASM in Africa different from other parts of the world? So as hopefully my lecture made clear, ASM is so diverse. We have artisanal mining, and then we have small-scale mining. And each one has its own problems, and the context really drives both the technology use and the problems and opportunities that are in one place. So what we usually see, I'll break it down to 2 types of mining. One's called surface mining, and that's where you basically need a shovel and a stone back. You might mine in rivers or along riverbanks or even in mountain tops. So what you usually see when people are mining along rivers or riverbanks is people using shovels and picks. They dig the dirt that the materials, which is called ore, out of the ground, and then they usually use a sluice box of some kind. And this is to wash away the heavy rocks. And if the mineral that they're mining is heavy, the material will, the sluice box is kind of the diagonal box, and you put the ore up here, and you put some water, and the materials will kind of catch in like a carpet material that we usually use. And if you Google sluice box, you can see what I'm talking about. That's the most common kind of technology used on artisanal mining sites. And then after they wash away the big rocks, they might grind it first if they mine gold or something to liberate the particles. If it's more, if it's bigger finance, because there's finance here behind the site, they might be them using, instead of human strength, using activators or other earth moving equipment. And if it's really advanced, they'll take that ore, they might wash it first to concentrate it. If you Google concentration in artisanal mining, you can get some nice pictures. They'll take it to a processing facility where they're either going to use, or there might be a few different processing methods in place, but I'll use gold as an example. They might use mercury to separate the gold from the concentrate. But if they are in a legal environment that allows mercury facilities or incentivizes that, they might send to a science facility. But now I'm getting into the weeds. So if you Google the material that you're interested in, whether it's gold or silver, and then just kind of look around for some answers, I think that will probably give it the kind of detail that you want. So the next question is, do we find ASM in developed countries like the US and Canada? Absolutely. We tend to see more small-scale mining, so more mechanized mining. There's a few TV shows now that are pretty fun to watch. One called Gold Rush, and it follows some small miners in Alaska, and they're after gold, and there's various trials and tribulations, and at one point they decided to go to South America and face danger and challenges there. So anyways, it absolutely does happen in the U.S. and Canada. In the U.S., sometimes gemstone mining is called gem hunting, and there's two different places around that this happens. One's North Carolina. They have a couple there. They actually turn into tourist areas. They like to can be into one called Gem Mountain, North Carolina. There's one called Cherokee Ruby Mine, and that, as the name suggests, you can get ruby there. Montana has lots of sapphires that are still available via artisanal mining, and Arkansas is also mining. I think there's also mining in Colorado that's taking place at other artisanal level. So absolutely, it happens in developed countries. Okay, I'll just keep going. So the impact of conflict minerals, well, of legislation on conflict minerals. It's mixed. I think it's mainly, it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, we now, thanks to organizations like ITRI, which is the International Time Association, we have a okay, I'm getting feedback that the sound has been fixed. Thanks to organizations like ITRI, we now have a legal supply chain, and also thanks to the government partners, that work with about 80,000 artisanal miners on 809 sites across DRC, Burundi, and Rwanda. This is not an easy system, and I can, on the one hand, miners have gotten a legal way to global markets now, thanks to the system, but it calls out of short-term pain. And what also is happening is that miners who used to be part of the tin, tungsten, tungsten sectors in these countries have for mainly price reasons shifted to gold, and no one's really been successful so far in the gold sector. So the impact of Dodd-Frank on gold, I think it's cut off you know, uh, miners from otherwise potential buyers. But anyways, that's a very tough question. There's pros and cons to the legislation, and it's not an easy answer. So the next question, focusing on women in mining. It says, can you please give us examples of local customs which prohibit women miners from working on mine sites? So local customs or laws. Yeah, it's mixed depending on where you go. There can be outright laws that prevent women from working on sites, or women in certain times of their life from working on sites. For example, in DRC, if you're pregnant, you're not allowed to be working on an artisanal mining site. But in other parts of the DRC code, say artisanal mining is illegal if you're not in a ASM zone, for example. So there can be laws, no matter how cloudy, that outright say that women should not be mining. But more so, it's custom. It's custom that stops this oftentimes. So you can have restrictions on women's economic activity generally. So Ethiopia is a good example, where in the West it's much more liberal society where women have lots of opportunities to work. But in the East, they don't. They can be wives, so they can be shopkeepers. And there's a few exceptions, but their employment options are restricted based on cultural norms. But in the West, they can dig, and they are digging. So it's just expectations. There are other places, like in Sierra Leone, where women have traditionally been in gold mining, and men have been in diamond, because gold is like this kind of slow and steady, and diamonds are like big signs. So that's where you kind of see it. Other times, you often see women not being allowed to work underground, and this can be not being allowed to work underground by the college or by the mine site owner. And I remember I was at a conference recently for women artisanal miners, and one lovely, lovely, lovely financier that I met, she said that she was not allowed the women workers to work underground. She has men do that because she's concerned about health. I just thought that was really ironic that here we are at a conference focusing on women artisanal miners, and then I have a female financier restricting their economic opportunities. So, and she was lovely, but I was just thinking. Anyways, and oftentimes women aren't allowed underground because in many parts of the world they're considered bad luck. In West Africa, you hear this a lot, that women shouldn't be on mine sites at all. Or in Colombia, for example, I was in coal country, and they didn't want me going underground because again, women weren't allowed to be underground because of bad luck. But I went underground, so there you go. One person says, if large companies produce 90% of all products, perhaps they should have policies to support artisans and small companies, for example, training small companies. Yeah, I agree. Um, in my lecture, just to be clear, I was saying um, I was saying that 90% of the world's minerals, annually mined minerals, are produced by large scale or industrial or commercial companies. With different terms they use. So 90% of the world's minerals are produced by these kind of large scale producers, and 10% are produced by artisanals. Um, and I agree. I agree that they should work together whenever possible. This is fraught with um, mismatched expectations, but they should. They're all part of the mining sector, and we're all hoping to have local benefit with these resources. So I completely agree with you. So the next question from Chile, Bravi. He says, thank you for the presentation. He said, mercury poisoning is a health risk associated with AS, and we assume that mercury has short-term effects. Yeah, so mercury can have short-term effects, but it has equally as terrible long ones. And the mini MOOC convention that I think I mentioned in the lecture, it's this big anti-mercury treaty that aims to reduce and eventually eliminate mercury use in a number of areas, including artisanal smelting. So yeah, there's a number of effects, health, environment, um, uh, and others that can have pretty immediate and long-term impact on our ability. The next question focuses on women miners again. It says, where is the percentage of women so high, between 30 and 50% in AFM sites? I would like to know, we also want to know what a rush miner is, and that I also refer to a lack of specialization as challenges of AFM. This is why the ASM sector in Africa is so bad, in Central Africa is so bad. So why is women's participation in mining so high? I think women are affected by the economy just like everyone else, or maybe more so in some cases. Um, uh, yeah, in my experience, it tends to be around 30%, but I have not been measuring it, so it could be higher in certain areas. And when I was in Indonesia recently, I was in a tin mine. Actually, I was in say, and the women that were on site were all widows, and that's not inconsistent with what I often find. Um, you can have some strong ladies that are mining who are not widows, um, but those that were there all happen to be, and that is really interesting. It could be about their kind of cultural environment and who's allowed to work doing what kind of job. So what's a rush miner? Okay, so there's kind of four different types of mining, of artisanal mining that we kind of characterize. The first is community-based, and that's when people who work at, are in an established town, um, somebody discovers minerals underneath their field, and then it's when people start mining part-time, as people are farming part-time. But it's a permanent community, um, and people are mixing mining with other livelihoods. Other kinds of mining situations might be what's called rush mining, which is where somebody hears about a gold or a sapphire or something discovery, coltan or whatever it is, and then thousands of people, maybe hundreds, but it can be thousands of people descend on a certain site within a few weeks' time, a few months. But it becomes a lot of people really fast. And they're migrants usually from other places of the country or other countries. Um, but they're kind of hearing about the next rush, moving around for the next opportunity. They're not planning on staying there that long, and it's caused a lot of damage to the environment pretty quickly. And also, tensions with locals tends to get pretty bad because there's a lot of outsiders coming in for one thing, and that can be really disruptive um, to a local government or government context. Um, and then the last part of your question, Guy, is the lack of specialization as challenges to ASM. Yes, so on some sites, people do have specialized roles. People are diggers, people are fetchers, people are haulers, people run the ball mill or the stamp mill or whatever it is. Others kind of do everything. They might work on their own, or they might work in small groups. Um, but yeah, so once you do start becoming more specialized, um, uh, in theory, you're going to make more money. But it's hard to kind of move towards that sometimes. If people are used to working on their own, they might not know their neighbors, and they like controlling the whole process. They like digging. They like watching. They know that they'll take care of it. They like burning, or if they're using mercury, like burning it themselves or watching somebody who they know can do it properly. Um, so it's because I say that specialization is a good thing usually. Um, there's a lot of challenges to that. Um, and the reason I think sometimes that ASM context can be so bad is because um, if it's illegal, um, the legal framework is not supporting better conditions. Um, and if there's no financier, they're going to keep using bad methods and not going to reach out to the geologists or engineers that help them learn better. So I hope that answers the question. The next question is from May, and he says, artisanal mining in Nigeria is often illegal and high risk, done by poor, uneducated people. Are there programs designed specifically to help people with skill, help equip the people with skills and knowledge? Yeah, so it depends where you are. So ASM happens in about 70 countries around the world. Most artisanal miners are mine gold. That's the most common material. Um, and in some countries, yeah, there are established programs. Others, there have been established programs and then stopped for different reasons. One of the best I've seen so far is actually in Mongolia, where a man named Patient Singo runs an incredible program funded by the Swiss government. It's called the Sustainable Artisanal Mining Program, SAM. And what they're doing is helping miners professionalize, helping them become legal, working with the government to help formalize in practice, and then moving gold mines from mercury into mercury-free technology. Um, and um, they've been doing this, I think, for the past 10 years or so. So it's taken a while. So it's not one of these kind of short-term activities that people get excited about in the minute. They um, they move along because they're frustrated. It really spent some time investing in building these relationships. Um, so patience and his team have built up the capacity so much that these miners, certain groups have been able to attain the fair mining standard, which is incredible. So you have Mongolian artisanal miners producing fair mine gold, um, and there's really amazing news out of the fair mine organization. They they've announced that the Nobel Peace Prize will be made out of fair mined gold, which is just an incredible accomplishment that artisanal mining could be associated with peace. And the peace prize we made out of the gold they produce. So congratulations to you for responsibility. Oh, and I should say, Pact is doing a lot of work with arms, but also on skill building activities, health and safety, and other issue areas in the country. So keep submitting your questions. I have two remaining right now, so if you have any others, make sure to get them in. We have about 15 minutes now. Especially if you couldn't hear me earlier, feel free to resubmit the question, and I can try. So the next question comes from Elena Kreutzberg, and she says, I assume it is much more complicated to introduce general rules and standards for small companies and artisans because of a lack of resources and it's difficult to establish control. Perhaps this is a niche for community organizations. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly why. That's one of the reasons why it's so hard. There's a lot of reasons why this work is hard, but because artisanal miners tend to be scattered, it can be hard to find them. One of the big trends right now in the ASM sector amongst practitioners is to promote self-organization. And this is for a lot of reasons. First, it starts putting some kind of sector organization. It kind of makes the sector more manageable to deal with. Basically, it's easier to roll out a program to organize with people versus um, several individuals. It's also easier to follow up with them. It's easier to get things done. So if a site needs to be rehabilitated, it's easier to have as a group versus one person. And also you can spread the reward around, the risk and reward, if people are grouped. Now, grouping people is kind of an art and a science. It you know it shouldn't be done top down. People should decide who they want to work with, form the companies or cooperatives based on whatever they want, whether it's the neighborhood, tribe, whatever they feel comfortable with. But yeah, it's a big trend right now in the sector. And then for governments, they need to decide how much control they want. Do they want to know every single person working on that mine site, or are they okay with having one point person, and then issuing a license to that person or that group, and not necessarily knowing everyone who's on the site? just makes it more difficult to keep track of. And people, you know, somebody might decide they want to go farm, or other people might come to the site. So it's just, you know, information is great from a development point of view and from a governance point of view, but it can be difficult to keep it up. Hopefully that answered the question. All right, so I have one more question. I'm happy to keep going, but you have to submit questions for me to keep going. So the last one's from Jody, and actually not from Jody, it's from the SBSN. There's a lot of research, a lot of well-meaning research as well inside the problem. This is a great point. I think it's kind of easier to do research, to be honest. It's much harder to actually make change. It's easy to kind of diagnose what's happening, but it's harder to brainstorm and do solutions and to stay there. And it's right. That's exactly it's a great question. I think it's like I think the heart of why we're still kind of paralyzed as a sector. There's a number of organizations that are doing some really great work. This includes Patient Singa's work for the Mongolia Sustainable Artisanal Mining Program. This includes Jennifer Horning's work for Solidaridad. This includes the Alliance for Responsible Mining in Colombia. They're an incredible organization led by Lena Villa. This includes Fair Trade's work led by Gonzaga in Kenya right now. This includes Pact work. I'll put a shameless plug in for my organization. We have about 21, 22 projects right now focused on actually getting things done. Research, but research for the point of design. So we have the evidence-based initiative and design a program that's based on real data versus something I imagine happening. And then we have different universities that. Sorry, and then there's the Artisanal Gold Council, which is and then we have different universities that are not only studying on the problem, but doing some really great work. So my colleagues over at the University of British Columbia are called UBC. The School of Mining and Engineering out there is doing an incredible job. Not only studying theoretically what could work, but also then showing us and documenting it. And then University of Queensland in Australia is doing great work. University of Surrey, and a few others. But those are the ones that I think about a lot. And if you do want to make a project in a certain country, you can see a Pact is working on. We need a donor to support it. That's the other challenge with this work is that there's not enough donors really appreciate the potential that ASM has, or that might be started off by the master and are afraid what kind of change might be possible. But unless you stick your neck out, nothing will change. Nothing good, nothing will change. And we need to stop doing all this research and start getting more stuff done. So somebody has resubmitted a question. Earlier, I'm sure you couldn't hear me. I'm sorry about that. What part of ASM, what is a part of ASM and economic growth in some countries of Africa? So I was saying earlier that ASM plays a really important role, especially in rural places where there are not a lot of alternatives. If farming has become more risky. If if other things just making artisanal mining the most rational economic choice, that's a really important role. And mining can give you cash versus have to wait an entire farming season to get cash. So it's really important to recognize that it's not just about jobs sometimes, it's about what it brings you. And if it is cash, for example, that's really critical, especially with um, situations in different really language parts of the world. The other kind of um, the other kind of big point to mind is that mining is the exploitation of non-renewable natural resources. And it's a problem when people are moving from sustainable livelihoods to unsustainable livelihoods. And people are moving from things like teaching, moving from things like farming to mining, because mining is a window in time. It's not going to be there forever. And so it's an opportunity that we should think about as limited and think about how we can use this mineral resource to plan for tomorrow. How can we use this infrastructure that we have, develop it, but for smaller? That road, that leads to a port, things like that. Can we have electrification that can balance of tomorrow's industries? And I think that's not happening. And I think people presume that something will be there forever, which it won't, because it's non-renewable. It can't go out. Um, so it's a very important job, and it creates one mining job creates six jobs downstream. So, for example, one digger um, job creates jobs for shopkeepers, for motorcycle taxis, for buyers, and everyone downstream. Um, but it is all based around the unsustainable industry and how they continue doing that. So the next question is, thank you for wonderful lectures. You're welcome. With regards to ASM LSM, are there concerns with predatory LSM operators, especially with the subcontracts? Some LSM operators in Colombia extract more gold from ASM or than their own. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a big promoter of negotiation, and but that's not always equal power relationship. And when these relationships get predatory, there needs to be some honest broker in between. Um, a common way of getting things up between LSM and ASM is LSM allowing ASM on their concession, but then the ASM has to use the processing facility of the LSM operator. And in different parts of Pact, for example, about the ASM did about a third of the gold in the ore, and the LSM gets 2/3 of that gold. And the justification is, well, they would get only about a third anyway. I understand the concern. I think it's something to watch. I think an area of innovation. If somebody else can figure out how to set this relationship up, whereby both parties would come away profitable, I think that'd be very welcome. Whether it's a 50-50 relationship or something else. Both sides have to profit, or else it won't be sustainable. And that's stability is a key part. So if you do try to innovate in this area, whether it be by performance standards, processor, or reuse issues of these shared facilities, I'd love to hear about it. I can keep going and hang out as long as I'm not cut off. So, especially since people couldn't hear me earlier, I'll just keep going to the question. Another resubmitted question was, what is a part of ASM and economic growth of countries in some areas out of Africa? Well, I think it's very similar. I think we're a lot more alike than we like to think sometimes. I can talk about where I was recently, like Indonesia. I was in a town recently that produced some of the most, the biggest quantities of tin in the world. And I was really confused when I was there because it was a beautiful town. And it's very unlike the artisanal mining towns I've been to before. And I realized that the town was a very well-established place before mining, and that mining is very new. That's why it was such a nice place, because artisanal mining towns can be pretty sad places sometimes. And so in this case, mining is a new livelihood for different people who didn't have very nice lives beforehand. That mining, but for them, mining is a new opportunity that they didn't have before in a more developed situation. So I think for that community, they're going to have to really they're going to struggle with whether people are allowed to tear up their front and backyards looking for tin, and the impact that has on community standards and planning, and also their own sustainability visions. So yes, I think in some parts of Africa, ASM is a desperation activity. Other places, it's a place where entrepreneurs, true rural entrepreneurs, are focusing and digging in, so to speak. And other parts, it's slipping in between. And sometimes the person at the bottom of the pit doesn't do as well as the person overseeing them. Anyways, I think that's really common throughout the world. There's lots of questions that were muted earlier. I'm sorry. Okay, so the next question is, do you think that it's possible to develop good practices and standards which promote responsible artisanal and small-scale mining? Yes, I'm a huge fan of standards. I think the minimum standard that we should all focus on first is meeting the minimum legal standards for a country. Now, some countries don't have appropriate standards. Don't have appropriate legal standards. By the way, they have copy and pasted the large-scale regulations, and copy and pasting is completely inappropriate for our diploma. Inappropriate in terms of financial resources. Artisanals are not like large companies, and inappropriate in terms of human resources to achieve these very high standards that are meant for higher companies, for larger companies. ASM needs its own regulations, and we need suppliers to be responsible, but they're need to be appropriate for their education level and also financial level. So whether the legal framework will be shifted, I think is a good question to ask. So I think basic legality is something we should all focus on because it can be empowering, depending on the place. Standards. There's some really good standards out there. My favorite uh, is the Fair Mine Standard, which focuses on gold and platinum. It's owned by an organization called the Alliance for Responsible Mining, and probably the best standard in the world. A standard very much local called Fair Trade. Um, they used to be the same standard, but then they went their separate ways, and now they're two different standards. And they're both excellent. Um, if miners can reach them, they're excellent. But some capacity building is needed for both those standards. Um, and it's really important to recognize that most miners are down here, and the standards are very up here, and we need to help them reach that glittery um, that glittery standard. I hope people can still hear me. Okay. So, next question is talking about a case in Tanzania where LSM is following ASM, and it's causing fights and deaths at a Tanzanite site in Arusha. Would it be proper to mediate the two to coexist that ASM? So the question is it better to coexist um, in this situation where you have deaths and fights, or is it better to evict? Um, Eviction should be um, the last option. It's expensive. It rarely works. Um, it's expensive both in the short term and the long term. It makes a place harder to work. And so it really everyone if negotiated cohabitation or some other kind of relationship can be set up. There's a few different ways that you can do this. You can do subcontracting of artisanals, whether it be mining or whether it be other services like hauling, bulldozing, things like that. It can be licensing assistance. So if it's a concession share situation, or if it's a site immediately next to the concession, the large scale company can help um, the smaller folks get the license, or help with paperwork, engage with government on their behalf, provide geological support. Companies spend millions and millions of dollars um, doing this intensive prospecting in every single corner of their concession, but that rarely gets given to anybody besides the company. And that could be their um, the shallow deposits. That information can be given to participants in these kind of cooperative situations. You can have job skills training. You can have efficient mining and environmental protection, of science stations, of population, things like that. There's a whole host of ways that folks can cooperate um, that um, that could work. It depends on the legal frame and whether people are actually allowed to coexist in the same place. Um, and it also features a potential partner, and that the strength of the stomach of the corporation that's interested in partnering. Not all these things are easy for any company to do. And also, both sides need to keep their promises, um, both the company and the artisan group. And it's better if there's one point person for the artisan group. It's better if they're a formal legal unit. And there's agreements on how deep people can go, and the repercussions if they dig too deep. They're ignoring safety rules. So there needs to be promises kept on both sides. But as I said, I'll just keep going because I know I've muted before. I think I probably should. So And one person's writing from Cameroon, and he wants to understand how to make ASM beneficial or profitable for the economy, right? So to make um, ASM um, both beneficial and profitable, the key word is um, it's beneficial in that it'll start improving conditions over time. So especially health and safety conditions, that's critical. And you'd be really surprised about how much of basic first aid training can help. Um, Drills such as, if there's a mining the tunnel collapse, how to save your colleagues. Just trying to have a bit of a safety culture in your personnel across your mining operations. Um, how to make it more profitable? There's kind of two parts to this question. The first part is um, profitable for who? And I guess the second part is, if it's going to be taxable. Um, Profitable means that then you need to start understanding the geology and the characteristics and for that, and what it takes to mine it better. So for that, they're going to need some experts. There's a number of ASM organizations around the world that are really good at this. Pact, on the folks at EBC, folks at AGC, the Arctic Control Council, and a number of others. But just, honestly, it just takes engineers that can recommend just basic, whether the sluice is at the right angle, whether they're actually grinding, or they're coming down the sluice, whether if it's gemstones, a couple of sieves before um, they start picking things up. Some of these things are just very basic, and basic like mine site planning. But for somebody who's very new to mining, they wouldn't know any of this, and it's just really important that they start getting professional assistance, in the form of an engineer or a geologist, that help them understand mine planning and proper processing, so that they can become more profitable. And for the state, taxation of ASM is a big challenge. Um, it's it's too long a conversation to have here, but eventually, official miners need to become taxpayers. For that theory, it takes time. But for it to be a long-term professional field that's taken seriously, we really need to become taxpayers. And that is making regulation uh, attractive is a whole other conversation, and that's something that Pact has all the time with different governments around the world. Okay, so there's one more previously asked question, and there's one new one. So I'll do the one more resubmitted question, and I'll put the new one. And we'll continue maybe for another 15 minutes. So the resubmitted question is, very often a change in a sector is influenced by a financial sector financing business activities. In the case of ASM, there's no financial sector stepping in, requiring adherence to best practice. In my previous answer, I was saying that actually, yes, there is usually a financier already there. They might be the local shopkeeper, or they might be the local big man or big woman, meaning a person behind that site. It's very important to recognize who's currently financing a site, because there's actually a security question. It's really important to see who's on the site and who is not there physically, but there uh, nonetheless. But there are opportunities for the formal financing sector to be part of ASM, but it requires legality, and they usually cannot get involved unless the ASM unit is legal. Okay, so last question. As we've seen in the lecture, small companies and artisans impact the local environment negatively. How is this problem solved at the level of countries? For example, murdered community activists in Honduras indicated lack of instruments. The question was always finished. Um, yes, I've been doing a lot of this and it's an incredibly sad situation. Also, miners, the level in which they impact the environment is hotly debated. If they're surface mining, if there's only a few of them, it depends on the place. But the impact is not usually that big. If there's 100 of them or several thousand of them, and over time, then the impacts can be dramatic and quite shocking. And depending on what kind of materials they're using, explosives, it can be pretty shocking impact. But if the mine is down, this has less an environmental, like a direct environmental impact that you see in surface mining, and more of a human health impact. We absolutely need watchdogs like Berta, who was killed in Honduras. Uh, and when a sector, I don't know the let's be clear, I don't know who was behind that murder, whether it was mining interests or whether it was other individuals. But we need people who would monitor the impacts of the environment, and the legal framework in the country is hugely important to that. Um, and I'm afraid there's no easy answer, unfortunately. But there needs to be a framework kind of under which people are encouraged to mind their environmental impacts uh, and held accountable when they're grave and unaddressed. That's a great question. So thank you everyone for joining me on this presentation. Sorry about the technical difficulties we had earlier in the call, but I hope that you were able to hear at least the end of the webinar. And if you have any other questions, feel free at it's cvillegas at pactworld.org. I'm not sure if it's available on the website. You can Google my name and put Pact after it, and you can find me there. So thank you so much again, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.